And I was going to sign up for this conference, and I'm looking at it, so speaker X, Y, and Z, times this, blah, 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 cost this, and it's in such a venue. I'll meet loads of people. And I looked at it and I said, hang on a minute. I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to hear presentations. I'm not going to hear stories. They're just going to tell me what they want to tell me that's safe. It's not going to get really behind what happened.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, it's Ben Eubanks, host of We're Only Human. I'm so glad you're here with us. I'm looking forward to talking to Larry today about some amazing stories, why storytelling is important to him, some of the things that we can learn from that, and hopefully to challenge you all to think differently about the next time you get a chance to stand up in front of a crowd at work. Larry, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Ben. It's great to be here, and welcome to Ireland.
I've loved Ireland, my last 24 hours or so here, and looking forward to a couple more days exploring the beauty that Cork has to offer here. Before we get into some of the fun stuff about storytelling, would you take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please?
Okay, so my name is Larry Kelly, and my background is I've been head of HR for Intel in Ireland, and I've worked in the US with Intel as well. I've been head of HR for Pfizer facilities in Ireland as well. And I've worked in China, based myself in Hong Kong for a number of years. And in the last numbers of years, I've been working my own consulting business. We've called it Attract Wonder, a very consciously chosen name to say attract wonder, curiosity and awe into our lives in work and in our personal lives. Look for possibilities from mystery and curiosity. And I do work all over the world in that space. Storytelling is parcel of the kind of offering I bring into organizations in a way that tries to excavate stories that have existed but have been forgotten. And the power of connecting with them again as a emotional connection as much as a leadership connection. So that's the work I do. I've got 4 kids, believe it or not. I say believe it or not, you can't see me, but anyway. my oldest boy is in Canada and he's 35. Patrick is 33, he's in Australia. Katie is 24 and she's with me in Ireland, in Dublin. And then I have a wonderful little daughter, Georgina, who's 6.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the surprise and joy of my life. But that's another story for another day.
As the dad of 4.5 kids right now, we have a 3-year-old foster daughter living with us. So
super lovely.
We're right there together with that.
I love that. Yeah.
Dad of lots of kids. There's lots of good stories to tell from that.
And I'm also going to say at the beginning, because I'm a big believer in synchronicity. All right. And I'll talk a little bit about this, right? Things come together when you put something out there and they form a little picture for you. I'm doing this piece in a candidate's shoes. And recently, as part of my kind of giving back to society and that, I did, for the first time, because I do storytelling workshops as well. That's part of my brief in my role in organizations, including across the US, by the way. And through a friend of mine, I decided to go into a nursing home, a care home, and run a storytelling workshop for the residents in the home and see how it would generate conversations. Because they tend to have very days that are laid out for on their routines, and they play bingo and Skittles and things like that. I said to a friend of mine, let's go in and do a storytelling workshop and see what comes out of it. And let's see if it brightens up their day a little bit. Mm-hmm. And if it does, we'll do it in other care homes. While I was in there, this staff member said to me, what we do here every 18 months is we make sure every one of our staff go through the experience of a patient and resident. So they have to experience what it's like to be hoisted up on a hoist. Mm-hmm. They have to experience what it's like for somebody to feed you. Mm-hmm. They have to experience what it's like somebody to wash your face. And that makes them realize more consciously the lives of the people that they care for day in, day out. And I thought, wow, that's just brilliant. And I bring the same kind of principle to the world of talent acquisition.
Yes.
What is the lives of the people that our processes are designed for?
Yes.
So that's just a background.
I love that.
Do you?
I do. So the magic wand.
The magic wand, yeah, I got to figure that out.
One of my good friends is and he does a magic wand session whenever he gets a group of employers together. Listen, if I give you this and you could tell me one thing
Yeah.
you'd fix,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so it's a wishing session, but it's always fun to hear what people are sharing. It's always fun, and you just hand it to someone in the audience.
Yeah,
wants
I
it.
think it's something similar along those lines because this thing has lovely lights and it makes lovely sounds.
Yes.
So at the very end, I was thinking about putting it out into the audience and getting them to answer the questions. So
You've heard these things.
Yeah,
What would you do differently?
I'd
What
like to
could you
thank
do?
Yeah. And finish with that today. Yeah. So we're only on for 25 minutes. And you see, I'm working with Claire. I used to work with Claire years ago because I worked in China some years ago for a few years. We lived in Hong Kong. And she was with Google, and I got her to join the company I was with in China. And we bumped into each other on a flight about 3 months ago and said, we must have a coffee. Yeah, we must have a coffee. We must. And we did. And when we went to have the coffee, I had said yes to doing the gig here, but I hadn't figured out what I was going to do. And as I'm talking to her, I say, hey, do you want to do a gig in Cork with me? And she said, on what? And I said, broadly, this is what it is. Let's build it together. So we've never worked before together. So it's our first time, but it's been great fun over the last number of weeks. We met once a week and we just sketched it out. I'm not big in rigid structures.
No.
I like things to emerge.
Yes.
Let it flow, have spontaneity, have fun, be mischievous, see where it goes.
Is the mischievous thing a Larry trait or an Irish trait?
It's probably a bit of both, actually. I think it's a bit of both. It fits well, I think, with the Irish psychic, where looking for that moment of mischief is always something close by. And storytelling, which is my passion in organizations. Yeah, so I go into companies. I do a lot of work in the US in San Francisco with a big biotech company there.
Yes.
And in Thousand Oaks up in California, near Malibu, with a big manufacturing company called Amgen. And in Cambridge in Boston with Amgen as well, and MSD in Philadelphia. And what I do is I work with teams, and I hold this belief. In every organization, there are stories spread throughout the history of the organization. But we forget them because we focus on presentations, spreadsheets, metrics. And we conduct sessions called lessons learned, and we put them into slide format.
And then they die.
Yes. And so what I do is, when I'm working with a leadership team, I insist on interviewing everyone in that leadership team in advance. And I find the stories. I say excavate the stories from their past. I look for stories that are positive, that show the team's ability. And I look to find those stories. And then I anchor my workshop in those stories. And I get people to tell the story. I don't coach them. I refuse to coach them in storytelling, because if I coach you, I contaminate your story. So at the beginning of the workshop, the storyteller sits in a storyteller chair. The rest sit around in a semicircle. You're not allowed a presentation. You're not allowed notes. And you tell the story. And everybody listens. And then we talk about the story, what was going on in the story. And what emerges is very human things within those stories. A lot of emotion. And we capture what was really going on there. And then we build the day from that. And when I work with teams, the other thing I do, which makes them very anxious, is I refuse to publish an agenda in advance. So I work with leadership teams, and they'll set a day aside for the workshop. And I will not publish an agenda. And it drives them crazy with anxiety.
Yes.
And it's not meant to drive you crazy with anxiety, but I understand you will be crazy with anxiety. And I say the reason, I say at the beginning of the workshop, so you all hate me here today. You hate me because I wouldn't publish an agenda, and you don't know what the day is going to look like, and you're anxious. So I said, there's a reason why I don't publish an agenda. One, I don't know how the day is going to go. Two, I don't know how it's going to emerge as a result of stories and other things. And three, when you see an agenda, what do? You start preparing. And I don't want you to prepare. I want you to show up.
One of the things, I'm hearing you talk about the stories, one of the things that I did unknowingly or unintentionally, but became powerful years ago when I was working as HR leader for a smaller company, is we talked about our values all the time, but they were this list of bullet points.
Yeah.
And so I started collecting stories and examples of our people.
Great. That's
living that out.
Lovely.
And so I called them our legends. And so we had, when I talk about, hey,
that's
when it says on time, every time, here's what it looks like. And I tell the story of Bo, who had a customer call
Spot on.
after working hours. He'd go and solve their problem over the weekend and just to make them happy.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that's what good looks like.
That's the same principle. People remember, they connect with the stories and they remember the stories.
Yeah.
I remember I was doing a session in Boston, in the Science Gallery in Boston, overlooking the Charles River. And I was with a team from Amgen who were working on discovery, new products, right, new drugs. And in my interviews with the team beforehand, there was about 50 at the session, I discovered that one of the team had responsibility for discovering a migraine drug. She was the lead person. And I said to her, I want you to tell that story at the session. And she said, everybody knows that story. I've told it. I've done presentations all over the company. They all know it, Larry. That's not important now. We've moved on from it. And I said, no, it is important. It's important for you to relive it and for them to relive it.
Yes.
And she got up on the storytelling chair at the beginning. And they always said to me, how long do I have? And I said, I don't know.
That's probably the most nerve-wracking of all the things.
I really don't give you a time because that starts to inhibit you.
Yes.
But I've never been there for a day, I say, with a story continuing.
Yes.
It finds its own end, I said.
Yes.
And we have to be comfortable with that. And I'm not going to box you into, you have 25 minutes between X time and X time. You sit into that chair and we'll take it from there.
Yes.
And she did. And there were people crying in the group and they stood up and they gave her a round of applause and they said how proud they were to work on this. I'm getting goosebumps here now as I'm telling you. And part of the story I remember her telling was she was presenting data on the Amgen auditorium, which had about a couple of hundred people in it. And all the senior people were invited for her presenting the data associated with this drug discovery. And one of the most prominent scientists who was in the group stood up in the middle of her presentation and said, your data is wrong. And she described how she felt at that moment in front of everybody. How crushed and emotional. She didn't sleep for days after it. And she went and she re-scrubbed the data and looked at it and she was right. And she went back to him. But she talked about her just being destroyed.
Yes. In front of everybody.
Yeah, in front of everybody. But her belief in what she was doing sustained her. And but do the same principle what you were doing with the values, the stories, Ben, to be honest with you.
What got you interested in storytelling in the first place? Tell me a story about storytelling, if you don't mind.
Okay. So I was head of HR for a company called Wyeth, who were taken over by Pfizer. And it was a biotech startup with about sort of $3 billion investment here. And I went in at the beginning and I was head of HR and we were going to be hiring 2,000 people. I was previously head of HR for Intel for a number of years before that. And one day I got a brochure for a conference. This is true. And I was going to sign up for this conference, and I'm looking at it, so speaker X, Y, and Z, times this, blah, 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 cost this, and it's in such a venue, I'll meet loads of people. And I looked at it and I said, hang on a minute. I'm going to go to this conference, and I'm going to hear presentations. I'm not going to hear stories. They're just going to tell me what they want to tell me that's safe. It's not going to get really behind what happened. And I went to our general manager on the site, and I said, you know what? We've done a startup here over the last number of years. But we have never stopped and asked ourselves to tell the story of how did we get this part of the facility going? How did we overcome this challenge? What was happening over here? I said, I have a hunch that if I do a storytelling workshop, we might find out more about ourselves and our own attributes by understanding how we achieved what we've achieved, which was a world-class campus. And all we've done is look at it through the lens of a presentation with technical data. And he asked him, do you mind if I run a little experiment? And we run a workshop and I book a hotel room and we see how it goes. And I met the same guy last night actually for dinner here in Cork. He's in Cork now. And he said, yeah, go for it, Larry. And so I did. And I picked out some storytellers. And one of the storytellers, because I also give them permission to do this, if you can link it to a fairy tale, do, and tell us why it links to the fairy tale. And one of the storytellers linked it to Peter Pan. And she told the story of Peter Pan, but it was the story of what we did. And it was just so beautifully done. And it was so full of emotion and so full of imagery. And so the storytelling went really well. Because when they finished, and I was only making it up that day, what I did was say, okay, what was going on from a team perspective? What was going on from a leadership perspective? What was going on from a problem-solving perspective? What was going on from a can-do perspective? what was going on from a risk-taking perspective. And people pull it out of the story. And we say, okay, how can we bring that thinking and those attributes to today's challenges? And first of all, let's take a moment to be proud of what we've done. Yes. So that pilot went really well. And the company then asked me to do it globally. So I went on the road to various sites, Puerto Rico, all around the US, the UK, Europe, with leadership teams on sites, applying the same principle. And then I said, there's something in this. And then I went back to college in 2015, I think it was. I was in China working, but my boss at the time facilitated a master's in the UK in a college called Ashridge. And I did a master's in change, and I dig deeper into storytelling, and I got more fascinated by it. But I'll have to be honest with you, Ben, I operate in the storytelling field more from an intuitive space, because I see all these people out there teaching you how to tell stories. And
Here's the script.
Yeah.
How to tell a story.
And I don't believe in that. I just shared this with you very quickly. You're getting me passionate about it again. I was on a site one time when I was doing it for Wyeth. Again, it was in the US. The head of the site was a guy called Hubie, and he was a really eminent scientist. And he was to tell the story of being summoned to go to New Jersey, Madison, New Jersey, to the CEO to explain an issue on the site. Summoned was the word.
Very official. Yes.
Yeah. And so he decided he'd tell that story because it had such impact on the site. So I talked to Hubie in advance, and I said, no coaching, Hubie. Just tell it from the heart. Don't worry. It'll come to you when you sit in the chair. So early in that workshop, we had an exercise, think of a moment of joy and share it with the person alongside you. And there was a guy sitting in the group, and it's like this, and he wouldn't participate. This before we got to the storytelling. And his name was Larry, actually. And he said, I don't want to participate in this. I haven't had joy recently. Oh, okay, Larry, don't worry about it. It was very disruptive. And everybody's looking at him, and I'm saying he wants to derail this workshop.
Yeah.
I could see it. And then we got to the storytelling. We took a coffee break, and I'm talking to Hubie, and I noticed perspiration down the back of his shirt. And he said to me, I'm petrified, Larry. I don't want to do this. I've never done anything like this before. This is the CEO of this site, very prominent scientist. And I said, Hubie, but just sit into the chair, and when you do, a movie will go off in your head. Just go with that movie. That is the story.
Just tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah. Don't try and create it. He sat into the chair. The team were like this, like kids at a campfire.
Like leaning forward, yes.
And Larry, our disruptive friend, was like this, completely in awe of what the story was emerging. He heard things that he'd never heard before about an incident he thought he knew. When the storytelling finished, because you're not allowed to interrupt the storyteller, Larry was the first one forward, and he said, Hubie, I've never been as proud as I am right now to be a member of this team. It was just unbelievable, the impact of storytelling, to a guy who came to a workshop skeptical.
Yes. That's tremendous. I love that. I'm thinking, one of my good friends, she was a change leader. You mentioned the change piece. What made me think of her. She was the change leader for, I want to say Accenture, maybe PwC. I can't remember which one, but she was there. And one of her things that she said was most important for her was elevating and celebrating the stories of leaders who'd been successful there. Because so often as HR leaders, we get upset at managers because they're not doing quote unquote the right things. She's like, when was the last time you told them what the right things were?
Yeah.
Don't just tell them the wrong things and not to do those, because that's not helpful. We need to tell them what great looks like.
Yeah.
And stories are one of the best ways to do that. As you said, it sticks in their head, and that gives them something to anchor to and say, okay, I'm not going to do that exact thing, but I can do something that's on that level of commitment, dedication, or support for my people.
Yeah.
And that helps them to hook into that.
It does. And you know what else emerges from stories as well? Is those very human moments where leaders are seen as humans, where they're seen to have fear and insecurity. Because that same Hubie told the story of getting up that morning, looking at himself in the mirror and shaving and having this fear, because he was living it again, and driving from somewhere near Boston to Madison, and just the fear and his heart pumping. And people never saw him in that kind of space of insecurity.
A human.
Yes. And it connected him with everybody else who feels the same things in life. And I don't sit down and say, share human moments, because if I do, I'm starting to contaminate it for you.
Yes.
But if I allow you and if I trust you, because that's the key word here in what I do, if I trust you to tell the story as it is without any coaching, even though you hate me for not coaching me, right? Then I trust what emerges to be the story, whatever it is. And I don't believe in trying to make them a good storyteller. And I remember one session in the UK and a site lead broke down really emotionally because he was telling the story of having to fire some people on foot of a quality incident. And he told the story that he was at his son's graduation and he got the call from the US to say, you have to fire on foot of this and do it immediately. And he broke down. And it was the only time I ever had to say, okay, some time out here now, just gather ourselves, give Jim, I remember his name, Jim, a chance. But again, people didn't know the impact this decision had on him until that moment. They thought he was a ruthless leader who fired 3 people. What's country ahead?
I'm thinking about, I love stories. I love telling stories. I love trying to find, you're sharing the fairy tale thing a minute ago. I love finding a connection to something.
Yes.
I'll tell a story and listen, and here's why, whatever the lesson is from that I picked up. Someone else may find something else in there, but I like to tell a story because people are going to get that more easily than if I say, here's the data point you got to remember.
Exactly.
Because my work is about research.
Yeah.
And I could sit there all day throwing numbers at you, but if I tell you a story.
That's exactly right.
And then share, oh, by the way, and here's what the evidence shows this is true, they're going to remember that much longer, much more deeply, have a connection to it. So that's what I was thinking of there. You had said earlier that you were called a maverick. What was meant by that?
What was meant by that?
What did you do to earn that? Maybe that's a better question.
I'm never comfortable in straitjackets, all right? And I'm never comfortable in not trying something different and just staying with something because it is as it is, right? And I have some stories to share about that maybe later. I shared them last year. Here's what I've done in the space of recruitment, where I think it's so dull and so predictable as a process that it needs to be shaken up. And I've done something to shake it up, which has been interesting experiments in themselves. It can be scary to do it. And some people I've worked with have been very scared working with me because I will put myself in a space where if it doesn't work, it'll be very obvious this didn't work. And if it does, it'll show something that wouldn't have been discovered but for taking the risk. If you follow what I'm saying there.
There's a risk here, but there's also a potential reward on the other side.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example of it recently, which has always been part of my modus operandi, right? So I got a gig in San Francisco last year with a VP of this biotech company. I'd worked with our leadership team with my colleague for a number of sessions in the year preceding. And she was bringing 120 people together in a hotel at the airport in San Francisco. She wanted to run a workshop and I was running it with my colleague. And I felt, I want to talk about culture, and I felt, you know what, I want to try something different here. So I said, why don't I play with the notion of blank jigsaws? So I Googled blank jigsaw, and I got a company that supplies you with 200 pieces of blank jigsaws, and they fit together, and they're blank. So I got that, put it in my suitcase, and I brought it to San Francisco. And I said, okay, I'm going to play with this now. And I took 120 pieces, and I put one piece in an envelope and a pen. So there was 120 envelopes with one piece of jigsaw and a pen. Big brown envelopes. And I put them on a table at the back of this big room, and I had another table up near the stage. And the exercise was, there's an envelope down there, pick one that you're drawn to, and come down to your table and open it. And they're, oh, blank. Okay, now, please write on that blank piece of jigsaw what's most important to you when it comes to culture. Right? And come up here and build the jigsaw. Now, by the way, I've never done this experiment before. I told them this. Right? I've never done this. If it doesn't work, you're scientists, you will know this has been an abysmal failure, and I will know, and I'll feel the pain of failure. Yes. But it'll be apparent, and I'll say, what lessons did we learn from failure? Yes. So I have no idea if this is going to work. And I'm being honest with you. I've never done this before. And my biggest fear was I had 80 pieces that I hadn't used. Yes. So what was the picture going to look like? So they come up to this table with their piece, right? And they all gather around. And I then decide on the fourth moment, you've got 10 minutes to build the picture. Yes. And then I count it down, right? And I'd said to the VP, whom I'd known for years, I'd never done this before. And she said, oh my God, Larry. And the CEO was watching. And then when 10 minutes finished, I said, stop. I went over to the table and a picture had emerged. I couldn't believe it, Ben. A picture had emerged. Now, there was lots of faces unfinished because I had 80 pieces. The picture that emerged was the word trust. That word stood out all in the jigsaw, and it was very central in terms of a picture. And the VP was just amazed. And everybody got into the spirit of it. The energy in the room, the fun in the room, and the creativity for the day. The fact that I admitted I'd never done it before, they couldn't get over that. Why would I take that risk first time around with 120 people in front of the VP and the CEO? And then they formed a team to work on culture, an employee team, because I'm big into employee engagement. And they called it the Trust Team. And I worked with them, I facilitated them for some time after that. And their goal was to come up with building the culture from bottom up as well. But my colleague who was working with me then, co-facilitating, who was a very good guy based in London, he was not able to talk with the fear that morning of something in front of 120 people that we'd never done before. And I had fear because the day was going to be different inside my heart if it was a failure. If nothing emerged, if it was scattery and if there was no coherence to it, no sense of message. So that was fun. And then recently I went to a puppet store in London. I looked up puppet stores, London, and I found this old lady. She lives above the store. She's about 80. You walk into the store, it's like Harry Potter. You walk into the store and there's puppets. You're hitting puppets that are hanging from the walls. And these are not Disneyland figures or anything. These are real puppets. Punch and Judy, everything. And I was running a session in San Francisco and I wanted to bring puppets over. I had an idea that we could use them. And so I bought a wonderful character, a big long skeleton. So I spent £400 that day with this lady in a shop in London where I'd say that might be close to a month's takings. She couldn't get over it. And then I went over to San Francisco. David came over with me. And I had a team and I said to them, put the puppets on the table. And I said, okay, create a puppet show that depicts your vision for this division you have and for the company in a puppet show. And everybody has to have a puppet. I'll be back in an hour. And I went away and I came back every now and again to see what the energy was like, just sneaking back. It was so much fun. They were brilliant. They went into character. They had created a drug during COVID. So the skeleton became COVID attacking. They'd found great ways. And it was great fun. Great fun.
The big takeaway I'm getting from some of these stories is that we rely so much on, I'm pointing at the screen in here, the audience can't see that, but we rely on slides and data and all those things. And those are helpful.
They are, yeah.
But
they do.
If those are completely replacing the ability and the opportunity to tell stories, then we're never going to get the full learnings of experiences. We're never going to realize the depth of experiences, the emotions. When was the last time someone put an emotion in their slides?
Yeah, exactly. And what I love to do as well, Ben, is I love to introduce playfulness and kid-like moments.
Oh, yes.
And what you asked the connection to Maverick was, and sometimes I said to myself, why don't you just have an easier life?
It'd be easier to show it with slides.
Yeah.
It would be way easier.
And when you're structuring a workshop, why don't you do it in the way where you say at 9:05 we're going to do this, and at 9:35 we're going to do that.
Yes.
And people want an agenda in advance. Okay, just send it out to them. And so it's quite exhilarating and exhausting because you're on the edge. But you're on the edge for a reason. You want to bring out authentic selves in gatherings where it's okay to cry, right? Because it's part of our life.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's it.
That's tremendous. If someone wants to connect with you, wants to learn more about the work you're doing, wants to hear more about the storytelling workshops and things like that, what's the best way to connect?
I actually don't have a website, believe it or not. Attract Wonder is the name of my company. I'm on LinkedIn, Larry Kelly. Okay. Yeah. My email address is an unusual one, if I may share that. It's larryinhongkong@gmail.com. And that's an email address I took many years ago when I lived in Hong Kong. And I kept it because I like it. It's not very corporate, but I don't care.
Thank you again to Larry for joining me on the podcast. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. It was a unique one, and I'll catch you again next time on We're Only Human. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.